All righty. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world.
Hello.
Thanks for joining us, everyone. I know it's going to take a minute or two for everyone to start coming in on Facebook and YouTube, but thank you for joining us. My name is Marissa Dystrom, and I'm part of the community team here at Tongal. And joining me today is Stephen Iwanyk, Tongal's Director of Production. Hey, Stephen, how's it going?
Hello. It is going excellently.
Going so excellent. As somebody who has been with our organization for nearly 5 years and has reviewed several thousand filmmaker pitches, Stephen is here to share his vast wisdom around what you can do to make a big impression when pitching on Tongal. It's our hope that creators who watch this will be able to work smarter and submit killer pitches to our projects, but I think much of what we're going to cover today is also applicable for any time that you're preparing a creative pitch. So now that that's out of the way, Steve, how's it been going? How's working from home been going for you?
I love having a cat on my lap whenever I work. I think you do as well. It's pretty excellent. I don't mind even when the cat happens to like walk on screen in front of the camera and everything.
Oh yeah, I'm loving seeing all of my coworkers' pets. That's definitely been a real upside to all of this. And yeah, I actually have set up like a little area for my cat on my desk just so that she can like stay there and not hopefully go everywhere. But she's out of the room for this so far, although the door is still open. So maybe something will happen.
It's kind of funny. I was actually telling my wife this last night, but I feel like I haven't been a part of the like quarantine and everything because we've been so busy trying to get a lot of projects launched for everybody. And to keep so many things active on the site that like I've been working nonstop. And so every so often I like come out and I'm like, all right, it's like the weekend and everyone's still wearing, sweatpants and everything. And I'm in like jeans and a shirt. And I'm like, yes, I've been working still. And I feel disconnected from it. We have plenty of toilet paper. So maybe it's just that. I don't know.
Oh, I'm down to my last 2 rolls and I'm like really nervous about having to get some. Well, it sounds like you've been adjusting pretty well. For everyone who's watching, this live stream is part of a series of Tongal-sponsored creative workshops that we've been developing to keep you motivated and help you learn new skills or start new ventures as we all do our part to keep our communities healthy and safe during this time. If you have an idea for a future live stream that we should do, or better yet, you have a skill that you'd like to share with us and the wider Tongal community, please reach out to our team at info@tongal.com, or you can always drop a comment down below in the comments and let's chat, let's see what you got. And oh, we got some people joining us. Yay. Yeah. And so if anyone who's joining us, please say hello. We'd love to know who we're chatting with and who's watching. And so that we can say hello back to you. Yeah. So, and you can also, for anyone who's interested in our live streams, we dropped a link in the description of this video on where you can learn about our past live streams, see which ones are coming up soon. So that link is in there, but also keep an eye on our Facebook and our YouTube channels and our community hub page. All those places is where you can find out information about what's coming up next. So the Tongal team, including producers like Stephen, have been working around the clock to secure more remote opportunities for creators to develop more online programming such as this. All of our recently launched projects on the platform have been designed with the ability to be done remotely, either at home or with a scaled back production. So, which is why we're so excited that we can still be offering projects on our site. How has that changed because you've been on the ground with all of this, Stephen, as we've been like working with our clients, working with our community to come up with projects. How have our clients been basically like reacting during this transition, and how are they thinking about creative right now?
Well, it depends. I mean, there's a couple things you can do right now that aren't really different than what you could do in the past. And I think that while they're really valuable for a lot of brands, they haven't been thinking about it a lot. And so now they're sort of seeing the value in that. So, so many brands have so much content going back, years even, right? And that's always been an opportunity for editors. And I see Shane Free, one of our awesome editors, is posting in the comments there. And, you know, editing projects are a great opportunity for editors, right? But also for filmmakers who might be finding themselves sitting at home right now trying to figure out what they can do. This is an opportunity to come in there and sort of retell the story, right? To sort of, you know, take episodes of a TV show that you've had going for years and sort of create an explainer video to tell people on YouTube, like, what is this show? You know, animators, as long as you're not doing sort of stop motion and have to sort of go into a studio, can, for the most part, work remotely anyway. So there's a lot of focus on editing projects. There's a lot of focus on animation projects. And there's always been, I think, the need for a lot of like authenticity in content. And, you know, we use the term internally, and it's a real marketing term, but UGC, user generated content, which is like people shooting something on their iPhone. But you can do really cool things with that. It's usually overlooked, and it really sort of right now both lends authenticity to the content that you're creating because it feels really intimate and really personal and really real. But it still enables production to continue because you don't need a huge elaborate production to do something like that. So if you're a filmmaker and you haven't really thought about that before, it uses a lot of the same skills that you already have. So you can scale things down and do some really interesting, really cool UGC style productions. So I think those are the three sort of directions that there's been a lot of focus on recently, and, you know, maybe for a little bit of time.
Yeah, maybe. I think everyone now is getting hip to UGC just because we're all doing our Google Hangouts. We're practically making that content just anyway with all of our friends and family. So we're all filmmakers now. Just I've set up like a light now in my room so that I can look great on all my work hangouts and stuff. I've gotten into cinematography. Who knew? If you're just joining us, hi everyone. I'm Marissa. I'm repping the community team, and I'm joined by Iwanyk, who is our director of production. No matter where you are, we'd love for you to say hello in the comments to get a sense of who we're hanging out with. I've seen a couple of you in there so far. Thanks for joining us. One of the people who actually suggested that we do a live stream about pitch tips, Courtney, I see you in there, so hello. And of course, if you have any questions about any part of the pitch process, creating treatments, making a pitch video, whatever, go ahead and drop them in the comments too. We're going to be checking in on your questions periodically throughout the show and hope to get to as many as we can today. All right, let's jump in and start sharing our pitch tips and strategy secrets. Stephen, what is the very first question that any content creator should ask themselves before they create anything?
The first question, how can I distinguish myself from everyone else?
That actually is a very good answer. And I think in this situation, when we're doing pitches, that is important. But I think the most important question to ask first is, who is my audience? Because if you're going to create content, you got to know who you're speaking to. So our first section here is know your audience. Obviously, this is a question that you'd ask yourself before producing a video for a client, but it's also a great question, again, to ponder as you're crafting your pitch. So maybe you can give us a little bit of insight into who exactly are reviewing the pitches that we receive for our Tongal projects.
All right, I won't overthink this question like I did the first one. I've already taken us off script. But in terms of your audience, right?
No, I love that one.
There's a couple of things to consider. Obviously, you want to know who the brand, the sponsor's audience is. Crafting a pitch specifically to speak to someone, you want to think about who is obviously the Tongal producers, whether it's myself or whether it's one of our other producers, the production coordinators. They're looking at your pitch. And we might know you, we might have seen your work, we might have worked with you 100 times over, but you don't necessarily know who at Tongal is reviewing your pitch. So I see this oftentimes where people worked on Tongal or they worked with a single producer before and they kind of figure, these guys know me, right? I'm going to sort of skip over this, I'm going to exclude this information, and you should never really make that assumption. It's easy enough, I think, for you to copy and paste things that you've included in the past into a new pitch. Approach every pitch like it's the first time you've ever pitched before. Obviously, if you've done Tongal stuff, you can mention that. Talk about the great experiences you've had and things you've done. The other thing that's really important is the sponsor itself, and there are sort of two considerations that you want to take into account. The first is with Tongal, obviously we're thinking about the creative, but we're also thinking about sort of the technical components, because our client doesn't necessarily know how to look at that. They may not be experts on lighting, they may not be experts on editing, they might not know whether or not the budget feels. So oftentimes we're starting by looking at the technical components to see if we feel someone can actually execute on what they might be pitching, maybe even before we even look at the creative. When it comes to the client, then you're thinking about what's their POV. If they create content a lot, it's going to be easier for you, I think, to communicate to them really clearly because they're used to creating content. If they're not used to creating content, it helps to explore how objective. You're a marketing executive on the third story of an office building in Columbus, Ohio. You watch a lot of video content, but you're not necessarily creating it all the time. So you might miss some of the finer points. Who it is, whether or not they normally create content or whether or not they don't. So
that's a really good point. How would somebody, yeah. But when in doubt, I think it's always good to like assume that people don't know.
Yeah. I'd say the same thing too. Like if you work with a right with sci-fi, and sci-fi has 4 or 5 different teams. So even people who've done a whole bunch of different sci-fi things, they pitch on something else and find that pitches go other people. So the important thing that creative to speak to both audiences is first and foremost read the brief 2, 3, 4 times. Then think about the brand's needs. We'll do it. It's important. Make us feel like our job was useful. But then think about the brand's needs and the executional mandatories. It is surprising how often people miss executional mandatories and be disqualifying and use time and effort into creating a pitch and then miss one really basic thing and all of a sudden you're out. Then I think it's really helpful to sort of research the brand too. That may seem obvious, but like take a look at the brand's webpage. Like, what are they doing? Who are they talking to? What's they do? And if your interpretation of that tone is any different from what you're seeing in brief, the brief should still be the direction you go. And you should sort of use that, like, are they open to out-of-the-box ideas? If you're going to pitch something really ridiculous and out there, does it make sense? Have they ever done it in the past? And then, certainly check out like our pitch examples to see how people have sort of done things like this in the past. And then one of the key things as well, and I think we'll get into this a little bit more later on, sort of thinking about the past work that you're going to include. I think we'll spend a little bit more time on that later. So maybe I'll skip over that for now.
Yeah, we'll definitely dig into that, exactly what that means when you're curating your links. But I think that's all like a good, just kind of, I think, place to start from. Again, I can't stress enough, like reading those executional mandatories. Pretty much every brief will have one. And that is like really the thing that you want to tick every box on as you're pitching and address it and show us in your pitch that you are thinking about those executional mandatories because they're so important. They can really make or break your pitch. So as a producer, what are some of the things that you are looking for specifically when you're reviewing pitches?
certainly, am I excited by the creative? I branch off this for a moment. I see questions. Jane for oftentimes a brief that a client puts together is really specific. And and I see this is oftentimes when people pitch, they kind of just end up restating the brief, right? So the question is like, how do I take what was in the brief and do something different? And when I'm looking at a pitch to see if I'm excited by it, I want to build off of that brief and take it in a compelling or a much more specific direction. And it can be a challenge, right? Because every brief is different. Some briefs might be really down the middle, and maybe there's so little you can do to depart from that. But your question should always be like, some motivation behind this brief. This is how they're trying to express. So what can I do to take this in a really interesting direction? If they're asking for, as in the Little Tykes project, really interesting videos of kids jumping little tykes, how can I shoot it differently, edit it differently? How can I make it a type of content? Can I parody using the format, right? There are all these ways that you should think about it. And that motivation for you is like, how can I make it different? How can I make it stand out? Because we have the benefit when we see a lot of pitches or a lot of concepts of seeing what the trends are. If we see where most people are, and then down here is where people thought about how they could do that thing that the brand was asking for in a much different and really unique manner.
I love that. That's a great point.
But still builds upon what the brand was asking for.
Nice.
Obviously, too, like, I want the creative platform, right? You can pitch an amazing story, but if you're doing a 15-second for Instagram, does the story work? Can you fit it all into 15 seconds? And then if the ask is something that's going to go for Facebook and Instagram and Twitter, is someone thinking about how it's going to be used? They might have an amazing commercial concept, but if they can't tweak it for each of its intended platforms, then it's really limiting.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. Let me see where I'm at. Sorry, I was just looking at a question that we had also from Riley Hanlon. I think we're going to get to pitch videos a little bit later, so maybe I'll save that. But if you feel up for it, we can talk about it now. Let me see. I'm going to move it to later. All right. So in terms of after like what you're looking for in a pitch, let me see if there's anything else here. I think you pretty much covered it. Awesome. Well, I guess I am supposed to check for questions now. So let's get to Riley's. All right. So he asked about the pitch videos for guidance. What do sponsors generally like to see in the pitch videos? And what's more useful to include in the video versus what you're putting in the treatment? How should they differ? I think it's kind of like everyone will approach it in different ways. But I'm curious to hear your thoughts. And I'm going to share, we do have in our pitch tips area here, what do we got? If you guys have ever been to Tongal 101, I will say there's a whole bunch of really interesting information there, but especially the chapter on pitching on Tongal, I think you'll find is very useful. There's actually a section here all about pitch videos, and we've given you a link to examples from the ways that other creators have approached this. And there really are just like a lot of different ways to do it. But Stephen, what would you say is how someone should think about a pitch video?
I love pitch videos, no matter what it is. I think that first and foremost, it humanizes you. And it's hard to overstate from a psychological standpoint because, we're a global platform, a tech-driven platform. It's super awesome. It opens up so many opportunities to people. But at the end of the day, everybody on the other side of this platform is a human. And when a client's looking at your pitch, it might be the greatest creative in the world, but it's a person they can see that you care, that you're passionate about them. And there's a subtle element to that that's really hard to quantify, but it's really valuable. And it must be, especially for people who are, because they make, it might just be you introducing yourself for 30 seconds. And then you can segue into some sort of rip reel or, sort of like highlight reel where you talk about or demonstrate what you might do. A pitch video is really valuable like that. And we'll, again, touch on this in a second in terms of like your past. When it comes to past work or when it comes to other videos that you might reference your pitch, right? Like, oh, this guy video is really cool, or such and such brand. The pitch video is an opportunity for you to contextualize all of that, because especially if the client isn't a content creator, makes content, sci-fi kind of knows how to look at things. But if you're working with a mattress company, or if you're working with Little Tykes, they might not make a lot of video content. And so if you introduce yourself, quick pitch video, and then you show them and talk about how cool it is and how it factors into what you want to do. And if you talk about this video that you've seen and this video that you've seen and what you would take away from all of those, it's super helpful. It's also an opportunity for you just to do right? Like, you don't even have to appear on camera. If you don't have a camera, you don't want to do one of these, Zoom camera setups, you can go off onto YouTube, because this is not a video that's ever going to see the light of day, and you can cut scenes and deliver them a video and be like, this is essentially what I would do. That's awesome. And it's overlooked. And it can be, certainly there's always going to be a return on investment question for you. It takes time to do a pitch video. It takes effort. You need to light, get sound, and do a lot of setup. And again, a lot of people just don't like to be on camera. But if you can film an intro that you can use over and over and over, and then all you're doing
I was going to say
is editing to
I've seen it again and again from some of our regulars, where they have, once they've like templatized the format of like how they do their pitch videos, they'll just plug and play based on the project at hand. So, and they do that for their their treatments as well, where it's like once you have your treatment, like bones, you can always plug and play based on the project at hand. So I do find if you're going to be pitching on Tongal regularly, that can be something that's worth investing in your time in, can really make a difference. Again, for us to get to know you, but also our clients as well. And again, there's so many ways to do it. And I think even a quick 30 seconds, like, hey guys, it's me. I'm really excited. And it really is a chance to show like your passion and your excitement for the project, like to say like you're excited about it, like, please check out my pitch. Even that can really go a really long way, I think. And I know you think so too. All right. So now that we know who we're talking to and what they're looking for, it's time to talk about pitching like a pro. That's a little dance I did for you. In this next segment, we're going to get into strategies for creating. We're going to get into the strategies for creating and curating strong pitches and supporting materials and all that good stuff, including the links to your past work, budgets, all that good stuff. This is like where the magic happens. This is what you're tuning in for right here, folks. How to pitch like a pro. So since links to past work are really one of the first things that you look at as a producer, Stephen, can you tell us what you're looking for when you're reviewing links to past work, and give us some tips for how to curate for maximum impact?
Yeah, absolutely. This is literally the first thing I look at. When I see a bunch of pitches come in, I'll usually just look at all the links to past work first and see who's really worth spending time on. I think that's what it sort of comes down to. And I think it's fairly overlooked. People just kind of think, these are the videos I've done. Here are 5 links. But and for me, this is just sort of like a guiding light in all of life, but context is key. Again, if you're thinking about your maybe not creating content, if 5 links are your 5 favorite videos that you've ever done, how should I look at them? Is the most relevant link at the top? If the coolest video that you've done is at the top, but it's not relevant, or if you're going to do something different, how can you contextualize? Like, I did this spot for $400,000. It's at a giant stadium. But what I want you to see when you're watching it is what I did with the talent and how I got an authentic out of this 8-year-old kid. And for your Little Tykes video, just using them as riffing on them, right? The experience that I have with little children is going to come through and give a really natural performance for you, even though this video seems like it has nothing to do with what I'm going to do for you. So lead with the most relevant link. Make sure you change the order of your links, or maybe even the types of links for the specific videos, including every time you pitch. And if you can, provide some context. You know, I didn't direct this one, but I shot this one, and I'm gonna do X, Y, and Z in our video, like what I did in this video. And my phone notifications are still going off, even though it's muted. It's really boring.
I was like, that's a really exciting, like, I want to do a little cha-cha whenever it comes on. So yeah, putting your most relevant work, contextualizing it, I think that's super important. Do you, I think sometimes people are like confused about like how many links should I include? What do you think is like the sweet spot for how many like reference videos do you, I mean, obviously you're not going to look at 20. So like, guys, don't give us 20.
Yeah. It's like 3 to 5. I know a lot of people include links to like their reel. A reel's not super helpful. You know, it's just like highlights, and I have no context for those highlights in a reel. If it's a link to your website, it's asking me to do a lot of work, and I'll do the work, but I know that the brand may not want to get and look through the 30 videos you have in your web. So 3 to 5, I think, is the sweet spot. And one other thing I'll add too, especially for people who are maybe a little bit less experienced or trying to make the jump from, you know, DP to director, or, you know, they've done a lot of low budget things. Now they're pitching at something with a medium budget, is, again, think about contextualizing, like, I've done this, which is really relevant and shows that I can do this, which I'm now going to do for you. Even though I didn't have $100,000 to do it, I still did it well. And that's what I'm going to incorporate.
Nice. And when should, you know, sometimes we'll ask for people to give us like links to other key members of their team. When is it important to include, like, say, your DP, or obviously, like, if you were doing a beverage spot, you need to let us know who your beverage stylist is. Like, what is the like rule for what are you looking for? Would you be happy to see like these are the other team members?
I don't think it's helpful to include past links for everyone on your team. I recognize too that oftentimes timelines change and projects get all messed up, and all of a sudden you lose your DP. But I think that if someone's going to have a marked or pronounced impact on your spot, then it's helpful to include some links. So if your DP is going to bring a really specific visual style to your spot, then I want to see that. If your editor has some ridiculously cool transition style and he's going to make use of motion graphics and fades and all sorts of crazy things, I'd love to see that. But if your editor is just, you know, guy who does capable editing, it doesn't really stand out enough to require that we need to dig into that.
Cool. And then another thing that I think maybe a lot of people don't realize, especially if they're new to Tongal, is that for most of our projects, people can submit up to 5 pitches. Steve, could you maybe like speak a little bit to when filmmakers should consider using more than one pitch, submitting different unique pitches versus providing clients with some like optionality within a single pitch?
Yeah, recently I've talked a lot with people about sort of optionality and potential. It's hard to do sort of like a real hard line between a unique pitch and just sort of like a single pitch where you're like, I can do X or I can do Y. I'd say whenever you pitch, you want to provide some degree of optionality in the pitch so that you can show to the client that you're flexible. I love to work with this actor. If I can't get this actor, it doesn't matter. I can get another actor and it's still going to be great. I'd like to shoot in a house like this or with a car like this, but I don't need to. If you don't like this car, I'll shoot in a truck.
I'm going to burn this car if you don't like this car.
Yeah. You know, it's our job to advocate for you and your creative when we see a great pitch, but you want to try and avoid situations where a brand sees it's a family and they don't want a family spot. And then they kill you because of one small thing. Right. And we can't always know when they're going to bump up against something like that. But if you can show that there's some degree of optionality with certain things, then you can protect against that. They can love your overall creative, and they know that they can take it this direction or over here, and it's still going to be great. The other thing is sort of speaking to the potential, because oftentimes you can't know everything that you're going to develop in pre-production, but you can talk about the potential directions that you can take something to really enhance or elevate it in a way. So I know someone asked the question about podcasts in the comments, and we'll get to that in a little bit, but podcasts, I think, are a great example of that, because if you're going to create 10, 20 episodes of a podcast, you might know who you'll have for the pilot episode to really get the client excited. Mm-hmm. But it's hard to know who you'll have in episode 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. And if you can speak about the potential of people that you can talk to and maybe provide some options of people that you can get, then you sort of protect yourself no matter what happens, and show that that underlying concept of behind your pitch is going to work no matter what.
And it shows that you're thinking ahead and like answering, having solutions for problems that haven't even like arisen yet. Just getting ahead of it, I think, is really important. Being forward thinking and knowing that you have that vision of what you want to make is so important.
Cool. And then to answer the last number of pitch question real quick.
Yeah, go ahead.
I think if the underlying concept doesn't change, it's a single pitch. If the execution changes radically, maybe it's another pitch. But usually you want to submit multiple pitches if the underlying concept behind your pitch is different in each one.
Yeah, I will say, I know if like I get a pitch for something and it's like you're giving me a list of completely different things that you could possibly be doing within it, like we're going to only award one pitch. So it's like kind of hard to just parcel out like this one idea from this 20 ideas that you gave me. Like I need to just have one because I'm going to only award one submission. So it just makes it easier for our team too, to like kind of parcel them out, I think, in that way when it's completely separate.
Yeah, it's difficult, maybe a little frustrating if I get to the end of a pitch and there's a page at the end and it's like, but we could do these 7 other radically different things.
Yeah, it's like, maybe I liked one of those, but it's like the whole thing is about something else. Cool. So then next, I know this is something that we also, if you're new to Tongal, you may not be super like familiar with, but we have 2 different kinds of project funding structures on the site. We have fixed project funding, where the project fund is like, you can see it at the very top of the page. It's a number, it's a hard number, you know what it is. And then we also do open bid project funding on other projects where we'll give you like a scale of like, we want to see what you will bid between these two numbers. What can you do based on that? So what is an open bid project, Stephen? And why do we have them on our platform?
Open bid, the first thing I'll say is it's not, and it is so rarely does it play out this way. It is not a method for the client to get cheap bids. I can think of so few examples of projects where they're like, oh, well, this is a cheap one, let's go with that. Really, it allows you to be more flexible and realistic in how you're approaching the creative. It allows you basically to set your own budget within a range that we try to provide. So we do them on the platform to give the client options, certainly, and also to sort of allow you to sort of provide options too. You know, where normally, again, just kind of riffing here, that a project might be like a $20,000 budget. If we give like a $16,000 to $24,000 range, then rather than trying to squeeze everything into an artificial budget, we can look a little bit more freely at the creative. And if this creative is awesome, this is how much it costs. Mm-hmm. We like this creative, and that's what we're going to go with. And the vast majority of time, it's the creative that's leading the client to go in a particular direction, not the budget. It just allows the budgets to be a little bit more accurate and reflect what people are trying to do, and not, again, try to force them into a box. But you know, it creates a lot more opportunities. It allows you as well to sort of provide kind of tiers, or again, sort of like optionality in what you put together. So, you know, this is my creative approach. If you want to go with the big budget, I can use a stadium. If you want to go down the middle, I'm going to use a soccer field near my house. If you want to keep it really tight and small, I'm going to use my backyard. And so providing those tiers and helping the client understand it, it's as simple as like a couple sentences, right? Mm-hmm. But it gives you, again, a better chance of being selected, because it means they won't sort of see a single bid and think, too expensive, can't do it. And it, again, allows you to include more options with your pitch. So I think it's been quite good.
Yeah, so that kind of like leads me to a question that I see came in from, I think on Facebook, from Kate Ramey. If there's one concept that you have that's scalable when it comes to a budget on an open bid project, should you do one pitch or two?
If it's a single concept that's scalable, I think that's a single pitch, and I think it's just about clearly communicating how it's scalable with the budget.
Yeah. Sounds good.
There's so much gray zone on all of these. But I think, again, if it's a single concept, it should generally just be a single pitch. And then if you're ever really concerned about whether or not someone might miss the options, Justin Johnson in the background there.
Yeah, those were smooth. Nobody saw that. Working from home, you guys.
I lost track.
Talking about scaling the budget, I think it's like also sometimes we'll see like within a treatment, people will give like the budget breakdowns where it's like, here's the higher tier, and then here's like the lower tier of like what that would look like.
I know what I was going to say. In the sort of synopsis, maybe the first page of your treatment, whatever, lay out your concept and say, and we provided 3 different budgetary options reflecting how this could scale up or down depending on your appetite for a budget. Mm-hmm. And then in terms of the number, because I see Kate was asking about that, I go with your ideal number. They dig in into the creative, and if you flesh that out, if you flag that on the first page, then they're going to know, if I dig this and that first number was maybe a little high, then I can dig into the optionality that you provide, and I can still go with this concept that I love.
Nice. Are there what are some strategies that you've seen filmmakers use to provide tiered budgets? Do we cover that?
So there are a couple sort of like cost drivers, I guess. Number of locations, obviously it only impacts live action shoots. I can shoot your product at home, in the office, at school, and I'm going to use all these different locations. The number of talent, the amount of motion graphics or animation, oftentimes is an impact. And then I'd say it's probably about sort of describing what you do differently specifically, because there are so many different complexities that impact whether or not a shoot is 1 day or 2 day or 3 days. And usually budget scaling kind of comes down to like, I'm going to need 3 days to do this, but if you pick this option, I can do it in a day.
Totally. And are there any red flags that you look out for on budgets?
I don't know that really low budgets are actually usually red flags. Not because I'm worried about quality necessarily, but my concern is usually that there's something the filmmaker isn't thinking about that's going to pop up later on, or that they're not giving themselves enough of a contingency so that inevitably in production, we get into post-production and, problems X, Y, and Z pop up. And all of a sudden their super low budget is insufficient and they come back begging for money, and it creates all sorts of new issues. And that's painful for everyone, really.
Right. That's true. You got to be realistic, and when in doubt, always ask for more money ahead of time.
One other thing I'll add is that, really when it comes to budgets, we kind of only need to see, the first page, top level budgets. It doesn't really make sense to break down every department and how much you're spending on staplers and, how much you're spending on printing, because no one's really going to dig into that, and it's all going to change anyway.
Yeah, you're going to need a lot more staplers. So I think now we got some questions that have come in through this last segment. So let me get to a couple of those. Courtney asks, so for the links to the past work, can you include links to projects you've done during film school, or personal projects even too? I think all that's fair game, right?
Everything is fair game. And again, if you're ever concerned about a link that you might include and how someone might view it, then provide context. I only had $1,000 to make this video, but you see the way I edited it, it's amazing, and it's super relevant for this project.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, I think there's a lot of ways that you can kind of play with the links to past work. We even sometimes will suggest, like, if you don't have any like social content in your portfolio, how can you edit something that you've already done and make it stand out in tell that story in 15 seconds to show how you're thinking about creating for the specific spot at hand. So
yeah, that's a great point. I mean, if you are really concerned about your past work, but you can do it, that's an opportunity for you to do a pitch video and to just edit a quick little rip reel for 30 seconds or 15 seconds and be like, hey, I haven't done Instagram content before, but I can. And here's an example.
Totally. And then we had a question. So we've been doing more podcast production projects on the site, and someone who is interested in that was asking about doing a pitch video for a podcast project. How long should the video be? This is totally applicable to any of your pitch videos. How long should a pitch video be? And would you recommend it on the podcast one? I think for any project, yes, if you have the time, we'd love to see your face and say hello in a pitch video. But
yeah, I think it's helpful on the podcast ones. I haven't seen a lot. and a number that I've seen sort of look like my video, where it's just someone next to their podcast microphone talking about what they're going to do. But in terms of length, I think there's a realistic consideration. If you're watching it and you start to get bored, probably too long. You shouldn't use the pitch video to go through your entire treatment. At the end of the day, one limitation to the pitch video is that although it gives people a clear idea of who you are and that you're passionate and maybe what you might do, in the end, the team at the client that's making this decision is going to have to share this with like maybe 15 people. And are the lawyers going to look at your pitch video? Nah, the lawyer is going to dig into your treatment to make sure there's no red flags there. The leadership is probably not going to spend all their time making a decision based on your pitch video. Pitch video is super helpful, but the treatment is still going to be the meat of your pitch. And so devote, important key high-level stuff to the pitch video, but don't cover the whole treatment in the pitch video.
Yeah. Okay, good. And then another question we have from Alberto speaks to people's level of experience when they're pitching. Somebody that maybe has a cool idea but doesn't have a lot of like work under their belt. What can they do in order to get the green light when they're pitching? How can they stand out compared to people who maybe have a lot of more shiny work behind them? And especially if there's like a bigger budget, is there any way to stand out if you haven't done like bigger budget stuff and you want to get there?
Get this question a lot. And I think this also comes back to the pitch video. Because if you've never done something before and you want to prove that you can do it, you can talk about all the things you've done in the past that apply and how you're going to do it in the treatment. But if you're a filmmaker, it's really easy to make a rip reel for your pitch video and show how you're going to do it. My past work demonstrate that I can shoot shots like this or that I can animate things like this. So I'm going to do that, but I'm going to structure the video like this example that I've edited together. That sort of, proves that you're able to execute on that amazing creative that you have. And usually that's what it comes down to, right? It's like, I've got a great idea, but they don't think I can do it. And if you sort of use a different methodology to prove that you can do it, that's how you can sort of overcome that.
Nice. All right. So I think thanks everyone for all the questions that have come in so far. It's been really great to get to answer them. So keep them coming if you think of any questions for Stephen. I think now we're going to enter our last section, which I'm calling required versus optional. This is something that you see on our submission form. Some of the pitch elements are designated optional, like the pitch video. So I think sometimes we get questions about like what really matters when I'm submitting my pitch. Things that you definitely should be including versus some things that are nice to have, but we could probably live without. Just in general, Stephen, why are some elements required, like our treatment, obviously, a very important one, and then some of them optional?
It's weird. I always feel like the treatment can basically just be everything. Like you've got a script, it could be in the treatment. If you've got storyboards, it could be in the treatment. Most of the time it's sort of like the bare minimum that the client needs to see to be able to make a decision. Oftentimes, if it's too difficult to make a good decision without X or Y factors, then those will be required. If the spot has a really tight timeline and it's super contingent on an actor's performance, cast might be required. If you have all the information you need to script something in the pitch phase, and this is all about really clever copy, script might be required. Sort of same if it comes to like an illustration or a graphic design, character design. If that's the make or break thing that's going to help them determine what direction they're going to go, it might be required. In terms of optional, think that it comes down to the audience. Going back to people who make content versus brands that don't necessarily make content for a living. If you take a look at your concept and you think that it's really visual and hard to describe, then one of those optional elements might be really helpful in helping someone who doesn't have the imagination for content figure it out. So that's where you might go with a storyboard. And then someone's looking at it and like, oh, I get what she's trying to do. Same could be said of a script. Casting, I always think, is not super useful 95% of the time. So I wouldn't really devote a lot of time and energy to casting in a pitch unless it is quite specific.
That's all good. Yeah. You don't have to say anymore. Say no more. So I think also the additional, like the optional things are just like kind of, again, they're like nice to have. If you are thinking about dialogue for the script, like sometimes it is nice to be like, just get it out of your brain and like actually have it down so that we can see it and have a good sense of what you're thinking. It just provides further context for explaining your concept and what you plan to do in your video.
Yeah.
But they're not always necessary. But if it's in your brain, like it's good to find a way to get it out so that the client and so that we can see as well.
Yeah.
And I know we've already really touched a lot on pitch videos, so maybe like we don't need to super duper get into it now.
Skip that one.
We've already done it. But again, pitch videos are optional on most projects. Sometimes we will make it required depending on what the ask is at hand. But for the most part, it's optional. We definitely think it's a great way to introduce yourself to our team, to the clients as well. And of course, there's like a bunch of ways that you can approach that. And we give some examples on our Tongal 101 pitch tips section. So check that out. Cool. And then what really matters in your treatment? Actually, before we get into this, that actually kind of leads me to a question that I see came in from Courtney, which was how long should a treatment be? And I think a lot of times too, sometimes we'll see like people will do like a single sheet versus like a fully fleshed out visual like PDF. How should a person be thinking about their treatment?
Okay, so I think you want to try and get into the content as quickly as possible. And this is a practical consideration. If a client has to look at 30 pitches, if each treatment is, has 3 or 4 or 5 pages before I get into the meat, it's kind of annoying. It's a little thing, but this business is all about little things and subtleties that make a difference. So obviously, nice title page, picture of yourself, picture of the content, whatever it might be, right? And then I get right into sort of a synopsis of what you're going to try to execute in that first page. I think that you can afford to go with treatments that are vertical rather than horizontal, like PowerPoint decks. I don't think there's a huge difference in what direction you go, but you don't really want to be super wordy. It's not about like a 5-page single space treatment. But that first page where you get into the content should be everything you need to know at a high level in that one page. From there, the specifics of style, which I think is really helpful. And this is a great place to include images either from your past work or from other spots that give someone a sense of how it's going to feel, what the tonality might look like, and how colorful it could be. Tonal examples are great to include in a treatment. So if you don't have a pitch video, it's a great place to sort of here's a link or here's 5 links to other spots that are really cool that I sort of use as inspiration for what I'm going to do here. I think it's helpful towards the back end of a treatment to sort of talk about your team in a limited capacity. I don't think you ever really need to get into a lot of hyper-specific details like the camera package and the lenses we're going to use, and I'm editing on this
Right.
platform.
A lot of, again, this goes back to like some of our clients don't know that stuff, or even like we get it, like you're going to get a nice camera. It's important, but I think it's more important, right, to talk about like how will this look, like how will that translate into the quality of the video that you're creating.
Yeah. If you're going to make me a cake, I don't really need to know what you're going to do to make that cake. I would just like a delicious cake, and you can tell me how you're going to make me the cake. The tools of the trade allow you to do that, but as long as you can do it, I kind of don't care what tools you're using.
Totally.
Unless they make a huge difference. You know, we're shooting a widescreen cinematic lens, blah, 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 blah. Okay, maybe that's important, but.
Okay. And so, yeah, so we're really talking here now, like about what really is important in the treatment, like what are you looking for? A lot of times we'll do projects where we're asking for episodic content. So if that's part of the project ask, then definitely like that's something we want to see in the treatment as well. How you're thinking about how the episodes would unfold. That's something. And I guess I was throwing it up here a second ago, but we do have a Tongal template section of Tongal 101, which I would highly recommend if you are brand new to ever creating a treatment. We have like a treatment outline that you can basically just download and then plug your own information, images, all that good stuff in, which I think is a really great place to start for people that are not as design savvy or have done a lot of pitches. I think it can be a big help.
Yeah. Actually, one thing I just remembered and looking at our little bullet points here, in terms of the production team, the one caveat I'd say to what I said before is that everyone brings a different skill set to Tonga when they pitch. Some people are just producers. They're not the director. They're not the DP. And so if your past work doesn't necessarily impact or doesn't necessarily apply to what you're pitching, but you're putting together a team of people whose skill sets are really valuable and enable you to do what you're pitching, then it's important to cover that.
Totally. Yeah, that's a good point. A lot of times we do have producers that are, pitching. And yes, at that point, we want to see who your director is. That's an important bit of information. And maybe, it's good to probably show if you're a producer, like here are things that I've produced in the past. But again, maybe context there is more relevant as well, where it's like, here's what I did on that and why it'll be relevant to this particular creative project. Cool. And then another question that I know that we get a lot is, does Tongal, do our clients, do we prefer to see a fully formed production team when people are pitching, or is being like a single person with a camera, a one-man band, so to speak, is that okay?
Good extension of the last topic. I don't think it matters if we can accomplish the creative. That's really it.
Right.
So if there are key personalities that are going to be involved and that help, basically help prove that you can execute something, then they can be in the pitch, and I'd like to know about them. If you haven't put your crew together yet, but I know that you've done things like this in the past and you can, I'm fine. When it comes to like a true one-man band situation, like a stop motion execution or an animation execution, again, I don't care really. I don't think the sponsor cares really, as long as you can execute amazing creative. Animation is really unique in that way, and that a lot of people that we work with on the filmmaking side, some of them are studios, some of them are families, some of them are a cool individual, really unique perspective, and a studio in their garage. Doesn't matter if it's cool. It's cool.
Right. As long as you can get it done, who cares? That's like, you know, that's really the point of Tongal in general, is like, it's all about like, can you do the work? Great. We want you here. We want you doing the work. Cool. And then I think it only really becomes like a detriment if, you know, if you're a single person and you're like, it's clearly going to be a large production, like you're probably not going to be the only person doing it. You know, it's that then it would be maybe a strike against you if you're not thinking about who you're going to be pulling onto your team. But for the most part,
if you're producing a 10 episode series of 8-minute episodes, I kind of need to know that you can handle the logistics.
Totally. Cool. I think that's kind of maybe everything. Any other questions that are coming in? Now is the time to ask them for sure. Shane also asked if someone is already working on a Tongal project, would they still be in consideration for another one if they pitch on a second project? Again, I think that that's something that we take into consideration sometimes. We do talk amongst ourselves and say, like, this person seems busy right now, and I've got them on this crazy project for a while. But for a lot of people, they do get to do like concurrent projects, right?
Yeah, I think in the end, if you think you can do it, you know your bandwidth better than we do. If we have real questions, we'll ask, right? And there have definitely been situations where I have concerns because I know someone's on 3 other crazy projects. And so we'll have a really frank conversation. But if you don't hear anything from us, it's certainly not the situation where you haven't gotten something because we think you're busy.
Cool. All right. Well, I think that about wraps it up. I think we covered a lot here, but I'm going to let you guys in on one last secret before we go. If you're ever in doubt about a pitch for a particular project, you can always ask that where? In the project forum, or you can always write into us, our community support channel at info@tongal.com if you want to keep your ideas secret and don't want to share them on the project forum. So that's always a good thing to keep in mind. And so I just want to take this moment and thank everyone for tuning in, everyone who asked questions. It was really nice to see and connect with all of you, especially those of you who are planning to now implement some of our tips in your next pitch. We can't wait to see you get even stronger and hopefully get the green light on a Tongal project soon. And of course, I could not have done this without you, Steve. Thank you so much for your time and for spending this hour with all of us, sharing your valuable insights with all of our Tonglers all across the world. And as we close out this edition of Between Two Ferns Pitch Tips, remember to keep an eye out for more community live streams coming soon. And again, if you guys, anyone out there watching has an idea for a future stream that you'd like us to do, a topic that you'd like us to cover, definitely let us know in the comments. We'd love to create some programming around your needs. So thanks again, everyone. Thanks, Steve.
Thanks, everybody.
I'm
excited to see so many familiar names out there, too.
Yeah.
You guys all rock. And have an amazing rest of your week.
Yeah.
See you soon.
See you soon. I'll see you soon too. All right. Bye. Takes a couple.